Welcome to the Human CMO, a conversational interview-style show that humanizes leadership at the highest level of modern marketing. I'm Natalia Arkuszewska, a marketing leader consultant and the host of the Human CMO. I've spent over a decade helping brands and CMOs navigate growth, pressure, and strategy, and now I'm focused on creating honest conversations about what the leadership really looks like behind the title. Today, we're sitting down with someone who's done this job not once, but 6 times. With me is Grant Johnson, a 6-time CMO who has driven 10x revenue growth and has been a part of 7 successful exits, which already tells you he knows how to build. He's what I'd like to call a full stack ROI marketer, someone who can zoom out to strategy and zoom into execution without missing a beat. But what I'm most curious about is the human side of that kind of pressure and scale. Grant, so good to have you here.
Holly, it's a distinct pleasure to join you today and look forward to the conversation.
So where are you dialing in from and what are we toasting with today?
Well, I'm dialing in from San Clemente in Southern California, and I'm toasting with LaCroix sparkling water, my beverage of choice during the day.
Well, delicious. Yeah, this is a wine glass, but sparkling water as well. So good choice.
Excellent.
So what kind of week are we walking into with this conversation?
Yeah, it's an interesting week. I am a fractional CMO after 6 tours of duty, which I guess mostly fondly refer to those trench warfares. I'm a strategic operator with chief outsiders, and there's 100 of us as fractional chief marketing officers and 20, 30 as fractional chief sales officers. We really think of ourselves as chief growth officers because that's what clients hire us to do. And what's taken up my head this week, the space of my head, is figuring out repositioning brand for a professional services company that's a leader in their category. And we have additional capabilities that will differentiate the company. And so everything involved, which I've done several times, as you might imagine, repositioning with figuring out the messaging framework, the brand identity, the differentiation, new website, new sales tools, new sales plays, new collateral. It's a lot to figure out, but it all starts with the strategy, getting that nailed down with the executive team. And I'm deep into it this week.
Sounds like a lot.
I enjoy it. So it's challenging, but fulfilling when you finally get to the answer.
Exactly. So when someone says, oh, wow, you're a CMO, what story are they making up in their head that's completely wrong?
We're only a chief in title. Like anybody can have a head of marketing or chief marketing officer. But as we've learned, and now with AI, I just think it's even more acutely the case that everybody's an expert. Can't you just AI that? Like, can't you just put it into a sophisticated prompt and automate all the work, and you don't need people? But really, the work required as a leader is to walk the walk and to be orchestrators. I like to think of myself as a conductor, bringing all the disparate parts of the organization, sometimes referred to as silos, in a unified fashion to accomplish shared goals and objectives, who happens to have deep expertise in marketing, but is not necessarily the chief every day.
So just kind of a side question here is, would you say that AI has sort of exacerbated the problems already that have been occurring in marketing and the leadership, or do you think it's making things worse or better?
I think it's a little of both. In our company, Chief Outsiders, we have an AI vanguard that I'm part of. We've been adopting these tools, over 100 for a couple of years. I know a few hundred CMOs through various networks, and we're all, grappling with operationalizing it in a pragmatic fashion. You just can't AI it. You've got to build it into the process. You've got to have governance, controls, checkpoints, and continuous improvement targets that you may reach or fall short of. So I think it's making it more challenging, and you have to be AI forward. I'm not looking for a full-time job, but we see, inbounds that come in from, recruiters that knew it's like AI savvy, AI forward. What tools have you adopted? So I think it's increasing. So you've always had to have savvy as a CMO, certainly in my space, B2B tech, over the tech stack and MarTech and, tools. But now there's just even more pressure to get your team and to build this AI orchestration capability. Ultimately, the judgment and the best decisions are made by human beings, but you've got to get it going in a meaningful, tangible manner.
So, what would you say is the least glamorous part of this job that nobody warns you about?
Um, I write a blog on CMO Mentor, and not as busy because I'm busy with clients now, but I've probably written a dozen blogs on the marketing performance assessment and how to prove the value of marketing through a very objective way that's all about numbers and metrics and KPIs that boards, CFOs, CEOs, the C-suite all agree on numbers. And so you make it objective, but you're always having to explain things, explaining why did this work? Why doesn't it work? Why are we doing this? How come we're not doing that? Can't we do everything? And so, I try to be ruthless about blocking time and creative time and work time and, minimize meetings that my AI agent can attend, right? If I don't have to be, right, or somebody can send me the summary and I can decide if I want to ask questions, that's great. But you want to spend as much time in setting objectives, goals, having checkpoints and progress and reporting on that and making adjustments and working collaboratively versus just explaining and educating, which is an important part of the job. And I always say that you can't over communicate in marketing. I've often served my teams like, somebody tell us we've said this twice. We usually hear you didn't tell us. So just keep communicating. I've done like marketing reports, monthly newsletters, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, explaining, it's very unglamorous and it drives me crazy sometimes.
I think it does to us all. It's very common. All the CMOs I've been interviewing actually bring up the same thing. And what's interesting is that, to your point earlier, is everyone seems to, think, oh, they're the expert because, with the AI, but yet we're still finding ourselves having to teach what marketing is at the end of the day. And will that ever stop? I don't think so. But yeah, so I wish somebody let me know of that when I was in university, learning marketing, right? No one tells you that.
Well, and one secret I'll share with first-time CMOs, I've mentored 20 first-time CMOs, something I do as a coach, mentor, advisor, is, again, we all want to be employed. We want a meaningful role and have an impact. But I say if it's the first time the founder or that CEO has hired a CMO, beware. They don't know what they don't know. And I had one CEO tell me, "Hey, Grant, you're doing great, but the board says they like Superman, they want Wonder Woman." I mean, it's like everybody has a superpower. Nobody has all superpowers. And so, when I've looked at roles after my second tour, or third CMO role, like, okay, are you a first-time CEO? Or you understand marketing? And those are the best relationships where you have a mutual respect and understand that you know things I don't know. I know things you don't know. Let me do my job. And that's always hard for marketers when everybody has an opinion or has seen something different, maybe not better, just different.
Exactly. So then what does being a CMO cost you personally that doesn't show up on your LinkedIn?
Endless energy and enormous effort. I like alliteration, so there's 4 E's for you. It can be exhausting. There's a fifth one. So I love what I do. I've always said this is the best time to be in marketing, and I meant it back when the internet came around. I was working then and in the early 2000s, and now with AI, I think it's just a great time if you love learning and changing and experimenting, collaborating. You have more tools to do that. You still have to have discretion, discrimination, discernment, but and it just takes a lot of energy. And I think you hire for expertise, but what gets you through the tough times is effort and energy.
And when do you feel the pressure the most?
When you've got an unmovable deadline, it could be your customer conference or your sales kickoff. I had a report for a client that we published, and it was a 2026 outlook recently. And I was talking with the CRO. We did these C-level interviews, which were really insightful. I said, we can't call it 2026 outlook if it's like May, right? And so I stepped in February, and they'd missed February. So I said, we got to get out in March, which we did. So that's really where it kind of, you can't make an excuse. If you've signed up for an outcome, you've got to deliver it.
Before we keep pulling at threads, I want to flip it and ask, what's something you deeply care about right now that people aren't asking you about?
Well, I just think it's the people element that is often lost in the equation. I've had enough, years, decades in the trenches as an executive and a marketing leader and a contributor that I think COVID really taught all of us. I hope it did. It certainly taught me like to be more empathetic. And what's going on in that person's life? Just like, you don't give somebody, hey, I need this Monday. Here it is, 4 p.m. Friday. Like, really? They have kids' soccer games or something to attend to. Like, once in a while, sure. But I just think I've had a different lens. I do have 3 kids, which, their own experiences obviously shape your view of the world. They're all college age or just out of college. But with people, whether they're early careers, you had shared in our pre-conversation, Natalia, as you first got out of college, or they're mid-career or late career, like treat people as people. And if you care about their lives, what's happening to what's going on with their parents or, their kids or something, like they might do a little bit more work for if you just keep demanding. There are people that just don't have that empathy gene. So I think it's really critical.
What's a belief you had early in your career that you completely disagree with now?
Well, I used to think that if you just worked hard and you put in the effort, you would get the outcome. And while there are diminishing returns by just doubling down and, putting more people on, whether it's a coding project or a marketing project or a go-to-market initiative, you can get better results. But what I certainly found is nobody cares about the work that you put in. They do in a sense, because now we're in the hybrid world. Like when you used to, they could see if you showed up Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, but now it's like, it's all about outcomes. And I've gone to a couple of marketing, and whether you're public or private, because PE wants a return, as do public companies, stockholders, stakeholders, that the end of the day, you have to deliver the goals that you've agreed to, the outcomes. And that's what you're measured on. If you put 4 times the effort or 1/4 the effort, nobody knows that. What they know is like you've got the pipeline improved, the conversion improved, retention or expansion improved, CAC cost, customer acquisition cost is lower, those kinds of things. And it's hard not to take it personally. You worked your tail off, your team knocked themselves out, and on Monday morning, it's like, okay, now what can you do for me? The next thing. That's just the way business operates, and it's you're hard not to take it personally. But if the more you can be objective and have that lens, I've inherited the group where they said, look at all these leads we produce. Yeah, but if they didn't turn into pipeline and bookings and revenue, who cares? Let's get fewer leads but make them better, right? So sometimes you have to reorient your team to how to think about the way the C-suite, the way boards and investors think about what marketing is there to do.
Yeah, overall, I always say it's one of the toughest jobs within a corporate environment. It seems like it's the easiest because people think it's fun and creative, and you get to do maybe a lot more interesting projects than an accountant team. But the pressure's always there. So.
Well, and there's one thing that, if you don't mind, Natalia, add to that is that you can't tell on the outside looking in. You can only on the inside looking out. Is that when you're in a sizable company, 10, 50, 100 million, billion, which I've been at many stages in my career, you've got several functions. I think you use the term full stack marketer. And in order, full stack marketer, yeah, okay, it's an interesting term, but as I've interpreted and I've seen where it works is I've got to understand what good looks like across every sub function. Now, while accounting has various sub functions, sales has some sub. Marketing is unique that it's got such distinct sub functions like marketing operations and demand gen and product marketing, communications and branding and digital and websites. And you've got to understand that all in depth. Why? Because when you inherit a team or you build a team, you got to know like you're getting best in class. And good
Mm-hmm.
enough doesn't cut it. And so you've got to go deep. You can't just, you've heard the T-shaped thing. You've got to be deep across all of it. And you may not have that expertise over time, but that makes a difference.
So, what would you say that you guard fiercely now that younger you gave away too easily?
Work-life balance. Right? Like how jump in marketing, I used to tell the staff how high. It's not like, can I jump that high? It's like, how high do you want me to jump? I'll figure out, get some springs for my shoes. But it's like, and I've tried to manage CEOs sometimes more success, other times like, guys, look, it's not just me in the weekend. I'll work the weekend. I'm this, I'm getting paid CMO compensation, but like I got some individual contributors, they got things to do. It's like, can you think on Monday what you need on Friday and not tell me Friday? Like, so, and because if you burn people out, it's been proven their productivity will diminish.
And I think with marketing, especially if you're needing to have always that creative element, being burned out is also never going to help, yeah, bring that creativity forth or even sustain it, which again, hard to understand if you're not doing it on a daily basis, you're not in the trenches of the marketing department. So what would you say is a mistake that shaped you more than any win?
There's probably been many, but probably one of the biggest mistakes that I
Oh,
made was not ensuring that not just the CEO, but the whole C-suite and the board was behind some strategic endeavor.
okay.
Because you put all this
Sorry,
effort
one
into like a
second,
brand
Grant. I think I
repositioning, let's take
lost
this.
you.
And if it never really wasn't on board, I have a board member involved in my current client who's helping say, yeah, this will fly. Then I once went to a board meeting and the CEO who had supported me, a new board member who, by the way, had run a really big, multi-billion dollar company. This person had a lot of gravitas, said, no, this doesn't work. And the CEO just says, well, sorry, Grant, you're on your own. I was like, oh man, I should have got a board member to agree with me before I went into that meeting. And that was early my first CMO role. It's like, I'll never do that again. So I've always built those relationships. And so like you've got more than one ally and you've at least
Mhm.
broach the idea and it doesn't fall dead. And then you've wasted all this enormous team effort and you have to go back to square one.
That's very insightful. I would like that. What part of this role still makes you uncomfortable?
Having to defend spend and defend my decision making. I mean, both those. And the defense spend is I once instrumented the entire for a $200 million company, everything in marketing does. And you could go to a dashboard instant on through like a Tableau dashboard that people would rec business objects, whatever. And so on demand, anybody, CFO, CEO, board, they could look at what we're doing, how it's working, what the pipeline, which segment, which sales team. And says, well, okay, you're doing all these tactics to improve overall pipeline. Can you give me the ROI of everything you spend dollars on? I said, no. I mean, the buyer journey is complex. There's multiple decision makers. The MQL is dead. And I can tell you the aggregate that marketing is producing 5 to 1 on every dollar. And that should be good enough. So if I ask for incremental 100,000, I will produce 500,000 from that. But, that
Mhm.
just, it's tough to always have to defend the spend and try to define the ROI of everything. It's just not possible.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first sort of, say, roles as a consultant with a startup, it was a very funny experience where I was asked to do marketing with no budget. And all they were willing to spend is on my time. So, I mean, I learned my lesson obviously the hard way because when you're first starting out in consulting, you want to take anything and prove yourself.
Yeah, of course.
Although that you get really creative, but then you realize long term, you're like, all right, I just don't have the energy for this, or I just want to work with people who understand that you can't just make money with putting in no money. So,
Exactly. It's like anything. If you're starting a business, you're going to have to invest in it. You can't expect marketing just happens.
mhm, yeah. So, what does this job quietly ask of you as a human that other people don't really see?
I think you have to be vulnerable and be able to accept the feedback, even if you don't like it. I don't think any human being likes being told they did something less than perfect, or they could do better, or do it differently. Um, you have the public face, and as a leader, you have to
Mhm,
be unflappable, unassailable, um, unstoppable, and just keep as a driver. We're all high D's, I think, that tend to be leaders in the disc. We're drivers direct, but you're gonna have to have that vulnerability. So yeah, hey guys, I took what we did. I went in front of the ELT, executive leadership team, and we got to go back. I'm sorry, we got to take another step. It didn't fly. I know you put a bunch of effort into this, and I take equal responsibility. Like, 'cause I always feel like if I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, I don't ask people to work on the weekend if I'm not going to do it, as an example. So I think that's sort of the human element.
what's something you're still figuring out now?
Well, I think one of my motivations for writing, creating the marketing performance assessment, which is 24 key metrics to assess relative market performance across any SaaS tech company
Wow.
in 1 hour. I can do it. I've normalized the numbers, ABC, red, yellow, green. I've done dozens of these assessments. Like, if I have the KPIs, I can say, here's where you're strong relatively to competition. Here's where you're weak. Here's where you're average. And here are 10 strategies to help get your performance better for your entire team across all dimensions. But there's an inherent mistrust of marketing. And therefore, how do we convince someone who is naturally skeptical, which everybody seems to be, okay, is it sustainable? So you got pipeline. Was it attributed to marketing? Did you influence it? Is it repeatable? And so there's just, you're constantly overcoming doubt. And so how do you do that in a more efficient way? We got to be much better as politicians, right? There's certain politicians I won't name, do a great job selling nothing or something they made up. We have to sell the thing, and it's got to back it up with data. And just like, well, I looked at the numbers differently, or I had a different calculation or a different outcome. But you try to be objective and metrics based in the conversations. At least you can agree there. They may not like the fact you picked this color palette or this tagline or this call to action or this vehicle, this channel. Why are we on Facebook? Why aren't we on Instagram? Like, okay, it can't be everywhere. We don't have the budget to go across all these social media platforms. I'd like to be on TikTok too, or YouTube, but I can only pick a couple channels with one person. So that's the thing. You're always defending, and it's never going to be easy. You have to live with that as part of the job.
I'm going to ask you an extra question because I'm very curious to hear what your opinion is. But if you were to be part of a committee that puts together the marketing program for students in university, what classes do you think would be, compared to what was, now or even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what do you think would be very useful to put on the schedule versus what has been?
I love that question because I've talked to many peers, Natalia, who are worried about this. Is because of AI, business people, including marketers, will lack critical thinking skills. Has
Mhm,
nothing to do with marketing savvy. You can get all that through, online, on-demand courses, and, you can shorten the learning curve as long as you're adaptable and you've got peers to collaborate with. And, yeah, certainly if I were to pick a course, yeah, I would, pick digital marketing or IT technology or, MarTech or something like that. But you got to be able to take the information. AI is great at synthesizing, and of course it's somewhat, because it's generative, it could give you avenues, hypotheses, but judgment, discernment, stepwise thinking, beyond, unless you write a 27-part prompt, which I've done, and a lot of people have done longer ones. You've got to have those skills, because otherwise you don't have context. When I went my first CMO public company, I asked the CEO, what do you look for? He says, contextual awareness, not understanding, not learning, not knowledge, but understanding in the context of what we're trying to solve for our business. And some people, they can be encyclopedias of information. They can't make a good business decision to save their lives. So I think critical thinking first and foremost.
Well, if there's any university members listening to this podcast, well, I'm sure they'll take that into consideration. Thank you for sharing. So what then feels unfinished for you right now?
Well, I don't think anything feels unfinished. I just like what I do, and so that's why I keep doing it. I like helping businesses grow. As a chief growth officer, I like achieving. I like the team getting recognition. I've had plenty of recognition, so my team getting recognition, they can learn and grow and achieve, career goals, financial goals, family goals. So that's sort of unfinished, and helping shape my kids' paths, right? They have to make their own decision. We all have to go our own path, but as a parent, you're there for a lifetime, and they're sort of early in picking careers and building their careers. So I've got life parts unfinished, places to travel. And there's work still to be done with clients, because what we do is really important at Chief Outsiders. What I do as a fractional chief market officer really makes an impact to these companies that tend to be 10 to 100 million. While we do help billion-dollar companies, we do help emerging growth mid-market companies more often.
So I think you've already alluded to a little bit of the answer for this, but I'll ask anyways. So who do you get to be when you're not the CMO?
Well, I get to be a tennis player and a parent. I'm going next week to Orlando to compete in my fifth national championship for Weekend Warriors. It's held every year. It rotates based on age, 18, 40 plus, and on various segments. You go in your group and at your level, 3, 4, 5, whatever your level is. And I've been fortunate enough to go 4 times. And it's Orlando one year for certain age groups. And then for fairness, that because the whole country goes, 32 people per division. Then it's Phoenix, and then it's San Diego, which I can drive to. So this year's Orlando. And I'm hoping to go 2 more years. So the last year that I compete, the 7th year, would be in San Diego, I can drive to. But so that's what I do for exercise and other things to keep fit, and obviously family fun and vacations. But yeah, that's what I'm not being a CMO. It's exercise and enjoying sports.
Definitely good relief when you're having the pressure at work to just be going after that ball. So
well, it's been proven that it's not only just good, release, it exercises the mind and body like almost very few sports that can engage the calculations you have to make in a split second, location, trajectory, speed, spin, and where your opponent stands, how fast they move. You have to decide the bounce. That's where you're going to try to hit the ball. So anyway, it's fun.
Yeah. It's interesting. I actually, a lot of the marketing friends that I have either have been playing tennis or starting out. So there's definitely some common thread there. And chess is another one.
Chess is great. I have a friend who plays it every day. I haven't carved out time for that. That's great for the mind. Languages, learning. I speak Spanish and French, not fluently anymore, but I've lived in both countries, France and Spain, as I mentioned. So yeah, I think these are all smart things. Do piano, take a musical instrument. Why not?
That's the creativity side. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Grant, for getting real with me today.
Oh, it was fun. Thank you. And thanks for the question in advance. I really like the question. I could see, the human angle that you're adopting.
I appreciate that.